Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
I don't think I have any more left in me, but I always have something in me for rapid fire.
Got to bring some fire. Okay, so here are a couple comments from Riley Leonard after Saturday's win over Purdue when he ran for 100 yards and 3 touchdowns, talking about contact.
How I play the game. I got no fear in the world of getting injured. I think the second you play hesitant is when things get scary. So I just play my game and trust in the Lord. Like, that's, I'm gonna lower my shoulder. I'm gonna get the first down for my guys. Obviously gonna try to protect myself here and there. That's, I need to be on the field, but whatever happens. I'm just gonna play my game and not play hesitant.
So Jesse, are you okay with Riley Leonard being so okay with having no fear of getting hurt when he's running the ball?
No, I'm not okay with that because we've seen how this offense can operate when his legs aren't, fully healthy or a full option, I guess you could say. I'm all for Riley Leonard running the ball, but you still have to find ways to take the least amount of hits as possible, whether that's getting, stepping out of bounds, sliding. Because at the end of the day, no one is Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson doesn't take hits because he's so damn elusive all the time. It's so hard to tackle him. Riley Leonard's not that elusive. He's a bigger target. I get it. He likes contact, and situationally, it might call for that sometimes. But also, you have to understand the situations where you can just step out and save, some of those hits, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, like hearing your quarterback talking about, I've got no fear of any of that. I mean, on the one hand, you can't put him in bubble wrap, and you don't want him playing with the hesitant mentality because that's when you are going to get hurt. Is when you have that. For the most part, I mean, it's football. He took some contact. For the most part, I'm pretty impressed with the way he's able to avoid contact when he does get out of bounds and doing some of that kind of stuff. We have seen him slide. But, there was the play that you talked about where, like, he's running in for a touchdown and he could probably just go in untouched, but instead he's kind of throwing his shoulder in there and all that kind of stuff. I mean, like I said yesterday, he did not play on Saturday like a quarterback who had any concern about an injured shoulder, which was obviously reported all week last week. Or, he didn't have any concern about his foot or his ankle or any of that. And he's not running like he has someone. You just want him to be smart. I think that's the biggest thing. But otherwise, I don't want a quarterback taking on linebackers and safeties one-on-one. That's the last thing that I would want. So there's a little concern there. But again, you can't play hesitant when you're playing football. You just got to play smart, I think is the best way that I can put it. So here's Marcus Freeman on safety, freshman safety, Kennedy Urlacher, who made his defensive debut against Purdue Saturday.
Yeah, he's a ball hawk. He finds a way to, find the ball, close space. He's a really good tackler. I challenge or even in special teams, can we get him out there more? I'm going to continue to challenge Kennedy to make sure you're a great practice player too, right? And those are things that are hard as a freshman to learn how to practice at that standard and then perform at the standard that he's performing at. But he is a really good player and made some critical plays for us on Saturday, and we'll continue to find ways to get him on the field.
Really made his presence known when he was able to get out there in the second half against Purdue. And the question that led to that response was, how do you use this guy more? What do you think? How could you use Kennedy Urlacher more?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing, everyone loved them some Kennedy Urlacher this Saturday. That was definitely noticed, right? But I think the way that you utilize Kennedy Urlacher is, teams like Notre Dame, essentially, right? Teams that run the ball really well. And if you want to bring down a safety into the box that is, fast enough to get to the perimeter, but also physical enough to make, some of these tackles that he's making, that's when I think you could warrant, Kennedy Urlacher being on the field is early downs, 1st and 10, kind of some, running downs, because he's not great in coverage and he'll get better at coverage. So, the more you get into 2nd and long, 3rd and long is not really ideal for Kennedy Urlacher right now. But like Marcus Freeman said, I think you have to find a way to get him into as many special teams as possible because he's a heat-seeking missile. And then when you are playing teams like maybe even like a triple option type offense, someone that you'd want to be, have in there at safety, because Xavier Watts, as good as he is, he's a better coverage safety than he is a tackling safety. And that's when you would want to use somebody like Urlacher.
Yeah, and that's what came to mind as well when they go out there against the triple option, because there's always going to be a couple of guys on defense who are going to start in those games against the option who you're not going to see in other games. And when you think about the freshman redshirt rule and all that different kind of stuff, it would make a lot of sense for a guy like Urlacher. That's what they're going to have to balance, because Marcus Freeman mentioned special teams. If you just want to go ahead and burn a year of eligibility, then I would have him on every special teams that you could, based on the kind of just, that heat-seeking missile kind of approach that he has to the football. The thing is, we saw him give up a big pass play as well out there. So how much safety, actual safety he's going to play other than against either option or get out there on special teams, that would be the question. But if you're not worried about using up a season of eligibility, he makes sense to have on every special teams out there. But that will be the question that they've got to balance. But you do get the 4 games during the season, and you get the bowl game as well. So he definitely made a name for himself pretty quickly, but I think you expect it as well. He's only 5'11", because that's part of it as well. Like, would he potentially be a rover candidate going forward? Would you want a rover that size? Would you want him a little bit more length?
I mean, his dad, Drew Tranquil, they both started off as safeties who
exactly,
basically got. Here's my philosophy on that. If a guy is fast enough to play at that position, basically play at a beefier position, then all you got to be concerned about is, are they physical enough? And he's definitely physical enough. So if you can combine that physicality and then top tier speed, if he, did end up playing linebacker, because again, that's what his dad did. His dad was a safety in college, right? And so that's the trend to me is you start off as athletic as possible, and then you get molded into a role that might fit you a little bit better.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Jeremiyah Love is only averaging 11.6 carries per game, but is currently on pace to run for over 1,100 yards in a 12-game regular season.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. When you start looking at, Jeremiyah Love averaging, just over, we'll call it 12 carries a game, but he's still on pace for, 1,100 yards. That's just elite running back skills. And I think that goes to show, why Notre Dame should continue to progress his workload throughout the season, essentially, right? I know you don't want to give, a guy this heavy workload and wear him down, but you got to find a way. I would love to see Jeremiyah Love, run the ball 15 times a game, essentially, right? And then Price, between Price and Leonard, they can split the other 15, essentially, right? And so if you can get to 30 team carries, I think that's ideal for Notre Dame. But no matter what number you get to, Jeremiyah Love should be the guy that's taking on half of those carries, essentially.
Yeah, Jeff says he needs close to 20 carries a game, and he definitely needs more. And we talked last week,
There's
how many
balance though.
Yeah, how many combined carries do Price and Love need? I still think the combined carries need to probably be somewhere between 20 and 25. They probably, if last week's game was closer, they probably would have ended up there. But don't forget, look at Riley Leonard and how he factors into it as well. The fact that Riley Leonard had 10 or 11 carries of his own, I mean, that's going to figure in there as well. It's going to do nothing but kind of save everybody's legs and all of that kind of stuff down the stretch. But it's amazing that this is the pace that he already has now, considering really the relative limited number of touches that he's had per game. Like this guy, there's still another level, I think, for this guy to go to. Like he could easily approach 2,000 yards if you double, not even double his carries, just like 1.5 times.
Let me ask you a question. It was something I thought about over the weekend, and you have better recall. You've been around longer. You can go down the list. Have you ever seen someone make guys miss the way that Jeremiyah Love makes guys miss? Like, you watch that touchdown run, he put that linebacker in skates, man. Like,
yep.
And it feels like he does that at least one. Like, if he gets to the second level, defenses are screwed because he just makes – I've never seen a guy who can open field the way he uses that jump cut and that cut to the outside.
Right.
Every time I'm like, man, this guy's going to get caught because you never want to run horizontally. But he shows so much speed because he never gets caught. He makes that cut, and he's just gone. But I can't remember a Notre Dame running back that makes guys miss like he does in the open field and still has the speed to accelerate from everyone.
I mean, like the closest thing that I could think of is like maybe a Darius Walker, but I mean, we're around what, 20 years at this point, 18, 20 years, maybe not quite that long, 15 to 18 years since Darius Walker. But even him, it's just not the same. There has not been anyone in recent memory like Jeremiyah Love. Kyron Williams was not that kind of guy. Obviously, Andrick Estime was not that kind of guy. But
Love is so, like, he's still thick at the same time. Like, he's
right.
He's a strong dude, but he still has the speed. Like, I've never seen the combination of strength, speed, and just the ability to just juke the hell out of people. It's insane.
No, I agree with what people are saying about Darius Walker's speed, but you're talking about the ability to make him miss. And that's all I was, it was like just that, and again, like, Irish AJ Riddick in the open field for sure, but he wasn't always able to get to the open field, even with the pretty good offensive line. So
I think the best comparison, and this bodes really well for Jeremiyah Love, I think he looks a lot like Bijan Robinson, a guy that's really fast, really able to cut through the hole, and can go out and catch balls as well. I was listening to the Manning cast last night, and they were saying before the game, Kirk Cousins was talking to him and said, Bijan could go out there and line up at wide receiver and run routes just like any of the other wide receivers could. And I think that's something that Jeremiyah Love can do. And I appreciate the coaches for working that into Jeremiyah Love's game because that's only going to help him at the next level. These NFL teams don't want a running back that can just run the ball. They want a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield as well.
Absolutely. Michael Parks, Alvin Kamara is a comparison that I've used.
Just a little bit bigger.
Yep. Exactly. And, Love is still relatively young in his career, but, again, I don't disagree with what Tom is saying. Love, the best tailback talent Notre Dame since Pinkett in the early 80s. I mean, I would still put Waters in that category in the early 90s. And I know I saw somebody say Ricky Waters, but, you're going back 30 plus years even to get to that point. But there's definitely, and I think Ricky Waters was the comparison that Al Golden and some other people were talking about coming out of camp. I mean, he's definitely just a different kind of back than anything we've seen at Notre Dame in a long time, just in terms of the overall athleticism and ability and speed and just the whole package.
So my question off of that is, and sorry, not to hijack your whole rapid fire here, but why are people so upset with an offense that could run through someone like Jeremiyah Love, right? Like, again, I know we don't need to pass the ball a ton, but when you got someone like Jeremiyah Love who could literally make everyone miss and he's got top end speed, I don't know. To me, it seems simple. Run your offense through Love, and until that fails, then you got to have a plan B, right? But
I agree.
Need a plan B if plan A is going wrong.
I absolutely agree. And I think we've kind of said that you've got to start running this offense through those running backs. And, because the other part of it is still, don't forget about Jadarian Price, because he's pretty darn good too. And he showed it the other day, the way
that's what's crazy. It's like, Love needs a break. Here we go. Jadarian Price, 55-yard touchdown run.
They relax a little bit. 24 comes in, and the next thing 70 yards, he's in the end zone. So, yep. So Notre Dame plays its second MAC opponent, of course, this weekend. The second MAC opponent of the season. It's the first time Notre Dame has ever played two MAC teams in the same year. My question for you, would you buy or sell Notre Dame just scheduling more mid to lower tier Power 4 teams like the Purdues of the world in the future instead of these MAC level opponents.
Oh, I would definitely like that, because I think you can bring back, some old rivalries. I think you can establish some new rivalries if you do this thing regionally, find, like teams within a certain kind of radius that you want to maybe start, some new traditions, rivalry type situations with. But to me as a fan, the thing that makes me say, just schedule these Power 4 teams is when something like NIU happens, it just doesn't look nearly as bad, because you're not losing to a MAC team. You're still losing to a Power 4 team. And even though, the Power 4 team might be worse than the MAC team, on paper, it looks better because there's no MAC attached to their name, essentially. And I just got to get this off my chest before I forget too. How about Toledo and what they did to Mississippi State this weekend? Everyone wants to talk about what happened to Notre Dame. A MAC team went on the road and completely destroyed an SEC team.
Yep.
Destroyed an SEC team, but no one will want to talk about it, because I don't know if it was because Notre Dame was ranked so high and, Mississippi State is down this year. It doesn't matter to me. Toledo walked in there and waxed.
When you're the fifth ranked team, when you're the fifth ranked team of the country and you lose to a MAC team at home, and especially if you're Notre Dame, that's going to get some attention, but you're absolutely right. It was a blip that Toledo went to Mississippi State and just beat down them the way they did at Mississippi State. This was another bye game. They only made a couple $100,000 less to go to Mississippi State for that game than Northern Illinois made by coming here to Notre Dame. And again, like I don't think that you're not going to have to do a bye game for a Big 10 team or a Big 12 team if you're Notre Dame, as long as you're playing a home and home with them. And I think that maybe they don't want the home and home. I don't know, but it just feels like it makes a lot more sense. I know that clip of Urban Meyer talking about the scheduling and all that stuff and playing the, around the quadrants of the country, and that kind of went viral a little bit last week. And some Notre Dame people were talking about it, but it's right. Like, Notre Dame didn't used to play MAC teams until Brian Kelly came to town, and they kind of softened things up. And that was kind of the response to everybody else was playing FCS. So Notre Dame added these MAC teams, and you kind of soften things up a little bit. I think that there would be
effect.
Yeah. I mean, I think that just from a lot of things, like you said, it's a lot easier to stomach if you're actually playing a Power 4 team and you do happen to lose that game. And it also looks better on your resume if you're at least playing a Power 4 team and you win that game. So it just feels to me, and then from a TV standpoint, I think it also makes sense having, they are going to play Indiana here in a few years, but whether it's Indiana or Purdue or, like say you go to the Big 12 and it's a Colorado or an Iowa State or, even a Baylor, whoever it happens to be. They tried Cincinnati, so I obviously won't use that one, but it just seems like it makes more sense to go that route. Like, there would be a lot of positives going that direction.
Well, also, it's just like, are you mentally setting yourself up for failure? Because look at these teams Notre Dame's lost to. This goes back to when Brian Kelly was still here. You got, Cincinnati, Marshall, NIU. Like, these are all, I feel like these are preventable situations, because, again, you put these teams on the schedule and inevitably you're like, well, we don't got to practice as hard this week. It's NIU, right? It's Marshall. It's, XYZ. And I think that's the other side of it, is I think you're mentally letting your team down because they feel like they don't have to prepare as hard at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a great point. I mean, look at the trap that they fell into by going through that. And I don't think you have that if you're playing a Power 4 team instead of a MAC team. So Colorado's Travis Hunter is averaging around 130 snaps a game, playing both cornerback and receiver. That's cornerback, defensive back and wide receiver for the Buffaloes. What's more likely? Hunter wins the Heisman Trophy this season, or he opts out before the season's over?
I would say that it's more likely that he wins the Heisman Trophy. I think that Travis Hunter is the ultimate competitor at the end of the day. I think he's a guy that he loves football so much that he's like, Coach, I can play both ways for you, right? And so I think he's much better defensively than he is offensively. I think that, he does enough offensively because they kind of, need him essentially, some wide receiver depth. But he's a much better corner than he is wide receiver. And I think that's where I don't think he'll be a two-way player in the NFL by any means. I think he'll be a corner in the NFL. But, his combined, offensive and defensive performance, I think would have him on a faster track to the Heisman than it would him kind of calling it quits by the end of the season.
Yeah, but what's going to happen when they're 4-6 here in a couple of months? And is Travis Hunter as great as he is as an athlete? And I agree, Ryan, he is incredible. Is he going to want to continue to play 130 or whatever snaps per game for a team that's got that record, and with a team that's 500 or even below by the middle of the season? Who's going to vote for him as great as he is? I still think you have to play you have to be on a team that's good enough. It's, Paul Hornung is still the last guy to win a Heisman Trophy for a team with a losing record. And that's we're going on 70 years ago or something like that, 60 plus years ago that happened. So I think it's more likely that he opts out. Like he'll end up, playing on a team that's 500 or worse, middle of the season. If he doesn't get injured, he's going to be fatigued. Is he going to be able to keep up that level of play? Why would you want to keep doing that for a 500 team when you probably got a pretty good chance to end up getting drafted in the first round? So I don't think he's going to win the Heisman because I just don't think that he's going to get enough votes playing for Colorado, regardless of how great an athlete that he is. Fair or foul? Georgia falling to number 2 in the AP poll this week after a narrow win at Kentucky over the weekend.
That is completely foul. I mean, look at Texas's schedule. They played Colorado State, Michigan, and UTSA. I think that's University of Texas San Antonio, right? Like their best win is Michigan, and I mean it's not nearly the same Michigan team as last season. You look at Georgia's schedule; they beat Clemson, Tennessee Tech, and Kentucky. I would say that Clemson and Michigan are probably even teams this season, and Georgia dominated that Clemson team at the end of the day. And I just think, honestly, strength of schedule through 3 games, Georgia's had a tougher strength of schedule than Texas, right? And so, it just feels very gimmicky. But Georgia plays Alabama this week. They take care of business. I have no problem with them basically jumping Texas essentially and claiming that number 1 spot again, because I mean, that's what should happen, right? Like you set the precedent that if you don't play as good as football, or you maybe play a lesser opponent, but you still win, you can drop. Well, Georgia beats Alabama this weekend, the number 4 team in the country. They should jump right back to 1.
I mean, look, they cast votes for this. It's not like there's, some guy sitting in his basement going, I'm going to make, Texas number 1 instead of Georgia this week. People sent in their votes. They got 22 more votes. So, I mean, I think it's fair. What did you say earlier, in the show? It's still the first couple weeks of the season, and everybody talks about how much do the polls actually matter at this point in the season. You're essentially kind of jockeying for position right now. Everyone's still figuring out who they are. I was a little surprised. Georgia does always struggle when they go to Kentucky, so I was a little bit surprised, that they kind of got knocked off the perch there in the AP. They're still number 1 in the coaches poll, though. So a lot of season to be played. I think it's completely fair for right now. Like I don't doubt what you're talking about with strength of schedule and all that kind of stuff.
It just feels very nitpicky, Like this is why I don't think that we should have polls the first month of the season. Just again, the polls exist because of they can market these matchups of 2 versus 10 and blah 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 to get more eyes on the TV and get more viewers and all that stuff. But for it up to me, you just wouldn't rank them until the first 4 weeks are done, because you don't know who truly who a team is until they start going out there and putting data points. So someone said in the chat, it doesn't really matter until the last week of the season, and that's kind of how I look at it too. All of it's just numbers until you get down to the very end.
That's what I'm saying. You're jockeying for position. DK says they matter because they sway the committee while they're watching the games. I mean, I feel like if they're using the same committee that they've used for the 4-team playoff, then I feel like that committee has pretty much done what they've wanted. They've completely disregarded the AP and the coaches polls in the past. You've gained a fan in Ryan Roberts, by the way. So.
Me and Ryan Roberts have always been besties. No one just knows.
Yeah, you guys need to do your own show. Like, come up with a catchy name or something. Swing that. Fill in the blank. It's blank that the ACC has reprimanded Pitt head coach Pat Narduzzi for saying, quote, "Wow, we beat West Virginia in the backyard brawl, and we beat the officials too in one game." End quote.
It's about damn time, because if there's one thing that Pat Narduzzi is good at, is whining to the world about how he's at a disadvantage because of the officials and because of the portal and because of the NIL, and everyone's against Pat Narduzzi at the end of the day. So, I think it's about time. I mean, $5,000 is nothing to someone like him.
Yeah,
right?
and they fined the school $5,000 too.
Right,
They didn't even
and so
fine him. So
it's just, I wish it would have an effect and it would get him to shut up, but it's not. He's just going to be, continuously the same old Pat Narduzzi at the end of the day. But I think it was funny that he finally got a slap on the wrist. They were like, dude, we've probably given you 10 warnings at this point. Can you just shut up? Like, we're just tired of it.
John, our Pittsburgh guy, not happy about Pat Narduzzi getting the fine. I think he's a dual Pitt fan, if I remember right. But come on, man. Like, if there's one thing we know about Pat Narduzzi, is the dude likes to complain out loud to anyone who will listen to him about anything. So I'm completely not shocked by the fact that Narduzzi finally got slapped around a little bit. It's like, look, you can't complain about the officials. How about this, Pat? You won the freaking game. Why are you whining about calls that you didn't get during the game that you won, by the way? But that's how Pat Narduzzi rolls. He's always got to roll in that direction.
Did you see the Mike Bray post about it?
I didn't. Stymie said he had a great tweet about it.
Yeah, so he says, Pitt football coach gets $5,000 fine from the ACC for talking about the refs. Mine was $20K, question mark, exclamation point. And again, I feel like Mike Bray doesn't really complain to near the level that Pat Narduzzi is always, running his lips.
But I think that was after the Florida State game, 3 or 4 years ago, is the one that he's referring to, when he got smacked around a little bit. And Bray, like, but that's a great point. Narduzzi bitches and moans all the time. Bray very rarely would complain about that kind of stuff publicly, and they hit him with $20,000, which really backs up, what Bray was talking about, because it was basically about, hey, come on, we're Notre Dame, we're in the league too, that kind of stuff.
The thing that I think is, yes, does bad officiating warrant criticism? 100%, right? But to me, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf, because Pat Narduzzi cries wolf every single game. And so it's like, it gets to the point where it's like, well, was there bad officiating, or is Pat Narduzzi just got a thorn stuck up his butt today?
Right.
Like, which one is it, And
like, it's usually the latter.
Correct.
That's usually the way it
So now I can't take anything seriously from him, but that's his own fault, because he wants to complain every single time.
Yes, exactly. Sloppy Joe says he would have complained if there was a subtle breeze. I don't think you're probably wrong there. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for tonight. Great whiteboard stuff earlier tonight, Jesse, and great conversation, great input from the chat earlier as we were talking about the offense. We'll see where it goes. I mean, not perfect by any means.
Better.
But if you can't, it was better. And if you can't be happy about scoring 66 points against a Big Ten team, I don't think you're ever going to be happy this year. So crack a beer and see how it goes, I guess. Tom, thank you very much for the compliment. We will take them Anytime. Stymie, hit that like button before you leave, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.